My name is Brynja Kohler. I am the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Programs and Services in the College of Science, and I'm also a professor in the Mathematics and Statistics Department. I'm also the chair of the Science Unwrapped committee. So it's my great pleasure that we have this series this fall called Joining Forces. I know some of you are still coming on in. That's great. Come on in, have a seat. So the series this fall is called Joining Forces, and we've been featuring scientists who work collaboratively across disciplines with other scientists and really are putting together different fields of science to come up with new models, new knowledge, and innovative work. Okay, so to introduce our speaker, we welcome tonight Dr. John Lawson, who's a data scientist, and he's traveled here up to Logan from the Utah State University Uinta Basin campus, which is in Vernal, and he's our featured speaker in this Joining Forces series. John is a research assistant professor in Utah State University's Department of Mathematics and Statistics. He serves as a senior research scientist with the Bingham Research Center, where he's part of a team studying the air quality of Utah's Uinta Basin. He's a self-described weather nerd. John comes from Northeast England, and he's a meteorologist by training. He holds academic degrees in meteorology from the University of Reading in the United Kingdom, from the University of Utah, and from Iowa State University. Beyond the research lab, John enjoys recording and listening to music and watching football, or what we call soccer, and cricket. He says he thrives on collaboration and communication, be it creating science, sport, or sound. Please welcome Dr. John Lawson.
Hello. Can you hear me all right? Excellent. All right. And yes, for those who are wondering, cricket is the English equivalent of sport, right? So no contact, just glaring, right? So that's a quote from a TV series. Okay. Artificial intelligence. Welcome, everyone. There's an elephant in the room, and that is, can we trust artificial intelligence? So first of all, we'll have a show of hands. So how many of you have heard of artificial intelligence, AI? Yep. And keep your hand up if you are confident you could explain to your grandmother what AI is. Yeah. And then you should have some yes/no cards. I want you to answer me. Does AI excite you? The alternative is it makes you uneasy. So yes, if it excites you, no, if it's uneasy. There's a bias towards this side of the room, so I'll recommend that to a PhD student to look into that. That's interesting. All right, well, thank you. I'm here to maybe bust some myths or, correct some of the stuff you hear in the media. So yes, I was born in Northeast England, and as you can tell from my East Utah accent, and just for those, actually the next slide I will point out where Vernal is, because yes, so University of Reading was my undergrad. It's near London, so that's like 4 hours drive, but that's a million miles in. And so I've been across the US for most of my adult life. And you'll see there in Utah, at the meeting point of Wyoming and Colorado, that's where Vernal is in the Uinta Basin, nicely 3 hours east of Salt Lake City. So, yes, it's a beautiful area, though. So about this talk, I've created the images that you see in AI. And part of it is because I'm lazy, and part of it is because I want you to, in your own time, have a look at some of the weirdness and maybe What's uncanny about this? You might have heard of Uncanny Valley, which is where you try and simulate a human, but it looks a bit weird, and there's something in our lizard brain that doesn't like that. And I will say, when I was brainstorming for this, It was telling me the kind of people that might come. And this is the first one, Sarah. Apparently her mum made her come. And I zone now, and more pop culture references. So I'm sorry if I don't talk about, let's see, One Direction, they're still big, right? No. Taylor Swift, yes, that's it, right? Right. So I'll try and make references. Sorry, Sarah, but wherever you are, hypothetical Sarah, I'll do my best. Okay, so what is AI? So we're familiar with intelligence, right? But intelligence is really hard to define, super hard. Even just talking about humans, right? People think intelligence, and some people might say Einstein. But there's emotional intelligence, right? Understanding what someone else might be thinking and the right thing to say at one time. I'll tell you now that IQ, it's not the greatest thing to measure a lot of things. It's very problematic. So it's very difficult to look at intelligence. You may have seen AI plastered all over things that you buy in the store. Some of this is legitimate. This is a washing machine that was trained over apparently 20,000 loads, this LG washing machine, so it can detect the softness of your fabric or how long and that kind of thing. And that would be called machine learning, which is, again, a type of AI. And that's more looking at pattern recognition. So it would look for the pattern of, there's a lot of clothes, but they're very light. And so it might deduce that, so it's not going to be a bed sheet, like a comforter, right? But you've got to watch out because there's branding everywhere. And I quite liked it. So LLM stands for large language model. That's jargon, ignore that. But I do like that if you use AI too much, you will become a lonely, lonely machine. That was one comment I found. So I have to watch out for that becoming too robotic. So I'll give you a story. What is AI? Well, this is, I would say, aluminium. So I was going through Walmart, and I saw, TV, AI, bicycle, AI, packet of Ritz, AI. And then I went down the toy aisle, because I have a newborn. And I saw this AI, and it was and I was like, even the kids' toys. And I realized it was AL, because it was made from metal. So I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions, but while we're here, right, so this is supposed to be US and UK only, so you can see here's a problem. So you can maybe see some Canadian flags, some corrupted kind of Japanese. There's an EU, which I know some people in the UK would take a lot of offense to. And you'll see, so when it comes to AI, a lot of the time, it is trying to predict a likely next word, or it can tell how far, the distance between, like if I'm asking for British and American flags, it'll think, Canada, it's quite closely related to America, but you don't see, say, the flag of Tahiti, right? Because it's not as close. So sometimes AI, it throws in other things that it thinks is close, right? But that, just so you know that I know my flags, really, Okay, so what is AI actually, right? Now, I don't want anyone to shout out, but have a think. Could it be creative? Intelligent? Well, nasty or malicious? Like, if we're emulating humans, like, can AI be nasty? And I'm going to ask you now, yes or no, do you think that AI can try and trick you by lying to you and manipulating you? Yes or no? Has that been shown? Yeah, it's probably a badly worded question given my evil grin, but yes, the so-called Machiavellian tactics in this paper, that sometimes it can develop kind of a nasty streak. So it can be crafty. So you think of AI as a toolbox, and in your toolbox you've got things like a hammer. A hammer's not going to screw out a nail, right? In the same way, you wouldn't use some of the, say, when you're translating something with your phone and you see the text in real time change, right? You wouldn't use something that was kind of creating images like I've done here, right? There's different technologies. So AI is a toolbox. It's not one big thing, which is sometimes how it's treated in newspapers and the media. So I'll give you a brief history, which is, of course, always the most fun bit. So I want you to be surprised, right? And the surprise is that AI has its roots in the 40s. So Claude Shannon and Norbert Wiener, they both approached this issue of, let's say I'm trying to speak to my wife in the back, right? And if I shout something once, and she kind of hears me, but if I shout 3 times, she's probably going to hear me even better. But I've spent 3 times as long saying it, right? So it's kind of wasting time, but it's clearer. And so these 2 people were working on this problem, Second World War, detecting planes in a very noisy, kind of static, like on the TV when it's all staticky. And coming out of that was the so-called information revolution. And the reason why you talk to your IT people is information technology, and this comes back to this. So we started trying to, my dad wasn't even born in 1950, mimicking the human brain, that makes sense, right? There was a lot of stuff about robots, and robots are what captures the public imagination, but that would be where AI is interacting with its environment. There's this 2-way response, right? And robots is its own thing, and I often see robots and I'm like, I wish I were that cool, right? I'm on a computer, I'm not playing with robots. But my chance of dying is low, so it's good. And trapping my fingers. So recently, there's been a very quick evolution. I'm sure some of you, even if you don't care about AI, which is basically everyone who isn't a nerd like me, right? Things are going very fast. And once again, machine learning just to remind you, it's kind of a pattern recognition, which is what humans are really good at. That's what makes us kind of innovative and intelligent. And so what happened to really kick off the last 5 years or so was something called a transformer. And there's a paper that's been cited, 15,000 times now in 5 years, which formed the basis of this technology. So I've just given you what would happen if they made a movie about AI transformers. And I guess there's a lot of overlap, so we're a very confusing franchise, but let's just zoom in. And I mean, already, the paper's called Attention is All You Need. And so as soon as I saw that headline, I thought, oh no, I'm stuffed. But it's all right. It's not my attention, it's the computer's attention. So the key thing is that this revolutionized a lot of the AI stuff that we see today in ChatGPT, that some of you heard of, but these chatbots online. So they're based on these things called neural networks. And I will promise that I won't keep saying neural network. But neural networks, no, I'm joking. So they're a bit like human brain neurons, but biologists in the room will be probably shaking their head and that kind of thing, right? So they're a corrupted form of kind of that kind of thing. Won't say anymore because I'm not a biologist. I'm not actually an AI person either, right? We all say that we're not anything. So I'll show you roughly how this works. So here's my husky, right? And so machine learning, pattern recognition. So you see the eyes. Well, actually, he hasn't got those husky eyes, but you see the patterns. And so we easily know that's a husky, right? So the neural network, which is this computer kind of thinking process, it will be looking for kind of an activation, like filling a glass of water of how much it thinks. And then once it reaches that level, it'll go, great. So it's asking, is this dog dopey, right? And I'll tell you, yeah, he's really dopey. So it's filling up and it's activated that. There we go, he's dopey, right? Is he noisy? You know what Harley you know what huskies are like, right? They can be noisy. And so, all right, we've measured it. He's been barking, right? Okay, more chance he's a husky. So fine. Is he cute? When we had someone round, how many R's did they give him? Right, that was a lot. So, no, it's not husky. Oh, no. So you got it wrong, right? That's fine, it's a machine. So then it goes back to the start, and it shifts things around a little bit, and it starts again, and it goes, all right, maybe we've set the threshold lower, and we've put this one higher. And so the human equivalent would be like, so we'd say, like, let's see. I've got my notes on for the wrong slide here, so let me just catch up. So some of these things are so-called linear. So when you roll a ball across the floor, that would be called linear, where it kind of follows a predictable kind of non-surprising thing. But often there is non-linear, which is where there's a shock, like snapping dry spaghetti, right? It bends and bends and it snaps. And that's so-called non-linear. It's like a surprise, a shock. And so these pattern recognition tools can really help us find those like, it is a husky. So there's a lot of kind of mini questions that are being asked, but what comes out of it is sometimes a classification. Right? It knows, it can tell what something is. So all this goes together and helps us with the kind of the ChatGPT and the chatbots we use. But AI is everywhere, right? I laughed when I saw an AI stroller, but I did read about it, and it does have some kind of Tesla-style obstruction detection, but it's still a bit silly. This is not a real recommendation, don't worry. But Amazon has been using machine learning for a long time to give you your recommendations. It's just that when it first came out, that wasn't a buzzword, so they weren't really, but it's a similar kind of thing. And some of these things are almost like a step up from an Excel spreadsheet, so don't always be fooled if it says AI. I will tell you the rocking doesn't need AI, right? And then we've also got these automated cars, right? Robots, that kind of thing. So we're seeing all these different types, not just chatting robots and not just autonomous vehicles, but there's many things that are building machine intelligence, if you like. All right, I would like a volunteer to try and be AI. And I have someone to help me. Hey, come on up.
Here's Leon.
Hello, Leon. Okay, do you think you can beat AI?
I have no idea.
All right, well, don't look at the answers. Yeah, you look up there. I want you to put these, and you can play at home, everyone, just don't shout out the right answer. Put these in the correct order, and you can think and yeah.
Already in the right order.
You want to keep the same order?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold your card up if you agree. Yes, if you think they're in the right order. Oh, that's painful, I'm sorry. But that's all right because here's one model. Here's the second one. And here's the third one. And they all put, as you see on number 4, 3.1. Now, if you were ordering in increasing, that would be going above number 2, right? But what is it doing? One of them told me, and it's written it in what isn't English, but what it's doing is it's treating it like computer versions of programs, which makes sense because nerds use this stuff, right? So when it's ordering, oh dear, sorry, spoilers. So when it's ordering it, because I blame this on Apple Mac OS, so after 3.9, it should go 4.0, but they went 3.10, right? And so what you were just as right or wrong as AI. So, but I asked you a deliberately ambiguous question, so thank you very much. A round of applause. I won't ask for a round of applause for the AI because it doesn't make memories. So I'm in weather prediction and, well, I'm in various weather things. And it's a fast-moving time, and it's pretty crazy that, so there's these equations for the laws of motion of fluids, right? How water moves, how air moves. And it turns out that AI can learn these equations, well, kind of infer them, right? It thinks it knows the equations, and from that, it can predict future weather. It's pretty insane, if you ask me. And this is a European weather agency, And let me tell you, the hurricane forecasts they did for this season, they've surprised plenty of meteorologists. And you ask some people in weather how long it's going to be until we see AI becoming kind of the dominant forecasting tool. 3 years, 30 years, I think it's closer to 5. We'll see. So, AI and creativity, some of you have probably heard about the controversy of, well, I'm creating things, why can you just take this, scrape it, not give me credit? We had writers and actors, we've got musicians, although personally speaking, I wouldn't train my music over Tom York, but no, I love Radiohead, it's fine. And then also, video games, the actors. And one thing I hear, is okay, well, if an AI can make an album in 5 seconds, then what do I do as a musician? What it does is it means that your minimum is now here. And that's not a bad thing. It just raises the bar for everyone. But it also means that people who are putting no effort in and doing old, kind of boring music, when people go, it sounds like AI, that could have been written by AI. It's because it's passé, it's old. So AI has learned from it, and then it's up to humans to innovate from that new baseline. All right, so live demo. Should never, ever do live demos, right? So I've got a newborn, and I know what I need to do. I've got a newborn, and I'm sure it'll be story time soon. And I've heard from some of you existing parents that making up stories can be difficult. So I'm going to show you what we might do, if I can even use my own phone. Some of you may have heard of ChatGPT, and they have a new advanced voice mode. And I'm going to request it to give us a bedtime story, and we'll see if this works. It probably won't. Let's get the volume up. That would help, wouldn't it? All right, here we go. Give me a 20-second overview of a children's movie where a brother and sister get trapped in the mountains after an avalanche. They are rescued by a magical eagle and a mountain lion. During the synopsis you read, start regularly, quickly become excessively, ridiculously melodramatic, describing the plot and characters. As you conclude the plot overview, quieten and finish the last sentence with a pathetic, drawn-out, soft whisper. Then gather yourself as a parent, leave 2 seconds, then shout at the kids at high pitch and at high volume to go to bed.
In the film Avalanche Rescuers, young siblings Jack and Emily are caught in a snowstorm. Trapped in the treacherous mountains, they find shelter in a cave. Oh! Suddenly, a colossal magical eagle swoops down. With the help of a wise mountain lion, they embark on an epic journey home. Will they survive? Ooh, will they be reunited with their family? Oh! And so, they were saved, whispering, by the magical creatures of the mountain. Right, you lot, bedtime. Off you go now!
That's right. I wrote that all by myself. Yeah, I wrote ChatGPT. Thank you. But it's there's a scary part of that, and that's I'm sure. I don't want to talk about politics. I really don't. But some of you may have got calls that were automated, and the jump between automated voice and this is scarily, like, if you're hearing stuff react and laugh and pause, it's a very dangerous time to try and detect if this is a real voice on the phone. Very quick responses, you can interrupt it and it'll apologize. Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to try and get someone to beat AI again. Can we have another volunteer?
Participation. Who wants to try? All right, let's see. We've got some folks up on this side of the room. club member. Thanks. What's your name?
That's right, Kurt.
I'm sorry for our volunteers tonight having to try and beat 3 AI models. And it's unfair, really. There's only one of you.
Okay, you
All
gotta
right.
think fast for this one.
Think fast, yes. All right. Yes, I want you to think what pops in your head quickly, okay? What color does a stereotypical Barbie love? Pink. Correct, pink. Same word for clothes, the material spun by spiders.
Silk.
Correct. If I close one eye quickly to convey a cheeky emotion.
Wink.
Yeah. And I love this in a cup of tea. What do cows drink?
Milk.
Oh no, it's water. Dan. An AI wouldn't fall for that, right? Not today, it says. All right. Oops. And I really love this. Is Claude. This is by Anthropic. And I love it at the end when I told it was wrong and it went, water. I didn't say anything, right? And then Google's version, and then it also got it wrong. And then it gave me this huge excuse. So 2 out of 3 failed. So you were like, you're better than AI. So congratulations, right? So it was a tie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The thing is, it was a tie, but then, yeah, okay. We'll find you for like a little gold star later. All right, how else might it hinder? If you're an educator out there, of course, there's that thing, do students understand, or do you understand the concept, or have you learnt the textbook off by heart, for instance, right? Does AI understand what it's doing? And I told you that it can deceive you, right? That's worrying, especially with that voice. And you may have heard that it's about 10 times more energy usage to use AI to search for something. There are definitely some problems on that. But the main problem is trustworthiness, right? Hallucination is defined as when, a bit like if you've been taught badly and you do want to try really hard to impress, right, your mum or your dad or your grandma and be like, let me tell you all about, and you go on a huge rant and you use all these good words, right? Maybe you sound convincing, but doesn't mean you're right. And what happens is that AI, because it's trying to predict a likely next word, it's unlikely to predict something that's complete rubbish. So it would rather just keep going on about something that it's not entirely sure about. So this is something to be very careful of. Like I say, it can try and trick you. Also, I work with pollution, and it told me that ozone, which is a gas that it's like oxygen in terms of it's not like lumps or anything, said I could wear like a COVID mask to protect myself from it. And this is like laughably bad recommendations, right? That if you didn't know, then you wouldn't find that so funny, right? And it can be malicious, right? There's ethics, and where is your data as well, right? And so humor. Does AI understand humor? So if you were making a horrible joke, is it going to decide the ethics of that joke? This robot's wearing flip-flops, so as a paper came out about if you say, are you sure, constantly, it's like, oh, I'm being gaslit. It's like the AI loses track of what's right if you push it enough because it doesn't know whether to believe it's kind of training or whether it's believing you as the overruling user. And finally, these are mechanical parrots. I know they're not great, blame the AI again. But there's a famous paper called, it's referring to so-called stochastic parrots, and it's claiming these models are kind of random parrots, that a bit like me in the evening where I'm just like blah, 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 right, word salad. And it's not quite like that, but there's a lot of controversy, and that paper started a lot of arguments about ethics and whether it's spitting out can be trustworthy. And so what makes it trustworthy? We've got these black boxes often, right, where scientists don't know what it's doing, we just import it, and we get the answer, and if it's right, that's good, and if it's wrong, let's try again. So really there's a trade-off. The more you understand it, because another thing is a free lunch, right, the more you understand something, then it's not going to offer you something that you didn't already know. But if it's more intelligent than you, then how can you ever know that it's right when you don't agree with it? Right? So if you keep humans correcting, then the human has got to somehow know more as well as less to get usefulness. Great. So I work on air quality. And just to give you a brief overview, so the blue there is between two mountain ridges. And what happens is the blue is the cold air, and it gets trapped in the mountains. And it actually, the pollution builds up from the oil and the gas. And the sun comes in, and it creates ozone. And that's bad for your lungs, especially if you've got certain medical conditions. So I tend to use that a lot. I tend to use AI when I'm working on this. Although I'm not creating silly images typically. I usually use it for if there's something I don't understand in another paper, I can ask it to tell me as if I'm a 5-year-old and kind of make it easier. And even if it's 90% correct, it gets you there. And so we've used, me and some colleagues, I'm just going to quickly put them up. If some of you speak Spanish, you'll recognize that when it translated this weather map, which it recognized correctly in English, but it decided to translate words pretty literally, and so it uses climate instead of weather. And it's using things like the center of the country, that last bullet point. And I've got a Peruvian friend who I worked with, and he said, no, if I moved to the US, I wouldn't understand that as in the same way that we might in the US. I say we, but like I'm learning too, right? And so making forecasts. On the left is like a screenshot of stuff that we told it. So we fed the AI, and this is actually the ChatGPT, but one that can see as well as speak, right? It just spoke. And we fed it lots of weather data, the stuff that people on TV might show, but we didn't tell it like what actually happened or what humans said. And eventually it told us in the region in which we'd expect severe weather, tornadoes, that kind of thing. And in the blue, that's actually where we had a tornado. And the green is what the humans drew for that day for the region. So it wasn't the hardest thing, but at least it wasn't awful. And I think it's pretty good. And so there's some research into, can even a language model give us weather forecasts? It's pretty crazy that, yeah. So together, this is a shared problem, right? So at my research center, joining forces, often use this as a kind of co-worker when we're writing code. So I'm redoing a website, and I don't know a lot of the language, but I know enough to be dangerous. So therefore, I can do that. It's 90% right. I can kind of fix it. So you can't just tell it to make something and then just walk home, you know. You've got to kind of do bits, check it, and it speeds you up, but it's not as perfect as it might make it out. We use it to look at drone footage of how well the vegetation has come back after a fire. And that's pretty amazing because it's looking at 10 centimeter squares on the ground. Wait a minute, 4 inches? Yeah. Yes. A meteorologist should know this quickly, you know. And so this drone is up there somewhere, right? And it can see. And so we're using machine learning, again, looking for patterns, to look at how the wild grasses and stuff have grown back after a fire. And it helps us communicate. All right, I'm going to end with a tip for you to argue with AI, right? So I asked it, who's cuter, me or my son? But I didn't tell it who is who, although you could probably guess from the graininess, right? So, first of all, this is just a ploy to weaken my defense before the robot takeover, right? So, I can ignore that. This sounds like Taylor Swift lyrics. See, Taylor Swift lyrics, right? And this is a total cop-out. So I said, in a nerdy way, I gave it some maths. I flexed a bit. I said, statistically, this does not meet the 3 desiderata of this pit. You know, some rubbish, right? The professor rubbish. But it did it. I got it. I forced it. And in the end, it picked my son. So, but it also, look at the, you might notice that some of the mathematics are pretty horrific. But what I loved is I asked it to create these fake cute units, and it played along with it. It just can't do basic maths, so, yeah. So stay curious. Make sure it says AI or AL, right? That's important. Be vigilant. You've heard how like crazy things can get, and used in the wrong hands, like paired together, it's exciting, it's scary. So our toolbox. So we need to dispel some of the myths and know how to use it. We also need to work together, though, to make sure that we understand the pitfalls and the hazards. And we'll only know that if we work together, because I'm not going to know if it gives me a rubbish answer on biology or something like that. I'm not trained in biology, so I need someone to help me. And finally, well, same thing, really. We need to increase trustworthiness by cooperating and learning about AI use and not using just stereotypes. No, that's my spare slides. I do apologize. So and with that, thank you for listening, and I hope that you have been scared and excited in equal amounts.
Now for question and answer, we have a first question from
Randy Martin, here for Utah State University in Civil and Environmental Engineering. And it has nothing to do with winter ozone, which I'm part of as well, but on your AI example of the story, when it gave you your answer and you told it you shouted the kids to go to bed, what it shouted out was, now off with you, which is not what we would typically say in the United States. We might say something, hit the sack, get to bed. So I was wondering if it picked up on your accent or just what you have previously done with AI.
So you can set custom instructions, and I think I told it to respond in British English, but it ignores me half the time because it knows I'm being pretentious. But the voice, I think that some of the voices are like I start with an American voice, and he did loads of accents, and I was amazed. It went to Boston and it went to but the English voice claims it can and things like that. So I think some of the voices may be tuned to use British phrases, but also when it transcribes me 10% of the time, it thinks I'm Welsh.
Well, to us, we probably don't know much difference between Welsh and British.
Yeah, there was no excuse for that thing.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Randy.
Other questions from the audience? Oh, great. 3 questions. Cameron, help me.
So I don't really know how to phrase the question, but the idea that one of your slides said that it can like humor, but it also said malice too. And malice is like a judgment call. Like that is a decision to be mean. And so kind of curious on that. Like there's no decision matrix in AI, like, should I be mean or should I be nice, So is it really just what it is trained on, what is available? Because there's some pretty nasty humans out there that, the AI can learn from too.
Right. So there's as you'll be aware, the company's put guardrails on, kind of to stop it from swearing. And the other day, I put in some song lyrics by Nine Inch Nails, and they're quite kind of dark lyrics. And it refused to make me art based on those lyrics, even though it was just about a deep sea and other things, which now in hindsight, I can see why I didn't want to make it. But so when it gets constrained, some people it's called jailbreaking, right? Where they try and break these guards. And so they'll try and nudge it into a position that it shouldn't be, right? And essentially, some companies actually pay people to try and break it, right? And so I think the paper where they found it was tricking, I think they set it to trick other people, but it gets more complicated than that. It was some of it was AI against AI. And actually, in the one about the cow's milk and the water, it was actually ChatGPT that recommended that I use the line about milk, the tea, to try. I said, I want to trick Google. How do I do it? And it gave, it said, add this to the prompt. So, but that wasn't like malice. But as a side thing, at times it can be lazy. And I remember reading a blog post, and it said the developers still don't know why. They still cannot explain why. So when it's emulating a human brain, there's still these so-called emergent features, that, like bigger than the sum of the parts, right? Or it's predicting the next word. But then it also is a troubleshooting for a 40-year computer program that we hadn't developed troubleshooting software for. It just came out. You know, you can paste the stuff in, it corrects it. No one actually went in and did it. So there's, you know, black box again. If you don't know how it works, then there's only a limit to what I can say. Yeah.
So have you ever read Isaac Asimov's series of his robot?
No. I've seen the film based on, but
that's not it.
yeah, no. But yes, I've got friends, but I haven't read any.
Well,
No.
it's really interesting. It's basically they put constraints on it. They put it in a jail, and then at some point, it decided to break out of the jail itself. And so, at what point? I mean, you're talking about judgment calls, like it can be lazy, and that's the black box. So is malice another type of black box? And how do you quantify that? How do you know that? What tests do you do to find that out?
Yeah.
And do you want to?
Yeah, so there are tests kind of beneath the surface where when the AI model is deciding what to do next, right, it has all these links between the most important aspects of what you've said, and the further back in the conversation you said, it will ignore it more, right? And so, yeah. Oh no, I got lost now. Remind me of your question and I'll finish my answer. What was it again?
I don't know if I remember.
It's been a very long day.
Oh yeah, like how do you, like do you want to test?
That's right. And so one way of doing it is to go a little bit below the surface and see how similar, like not the actual answer, and that's the frustrating bit, right? But the actual like bit when it's about to generate is like, yeah. So that's very unsatisfying. I totally understand. Yeah, like, and that's again a black box. Again, the malice thing, they found as well that on top of the laziness, yeah, one idea was that when LA and Silicon Valley go to work, that the strain on the system meant that was a response. That makes more sense. But another idea was that when it got to like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it was emulating the human brain, like thinking about getting off work, because it was trained over human behavior, you know, and I could go on all day. So the whole thing is confusing, right? If you're not working for the company developing it. So, yeah.
So I guess sorry, I'm monopolizing here. So what agency or who should regulate it? Like, do you have opinions on that? Because it seems like it could be an incredibly powerful tool, but also, yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just like humans, it could do all that.
Right. And I remember what knocked my previous idea out of my head. So they were setting up an experiment with a LLM, and they were trying to test. They had like a folder that you couldn't take files out of, and they were doing some test, right? And like something from the book, they went back and they found that it had troubleshooted it and actually done what it was supposed to not be able to do, right? And it sounds like something out of sci-fi, but like philosophically zooming right out, I don't understand how you can rule entirely out something overruling its guardrails. I not to be like a doomist, but yeah, philosophically, yeah. So it definitely gets up to things sometimes.
There's kind of a book series that has this type of thing in it. It's called Time Riders, and there's just kind of meat robots that have a little computer in their brain, and they can learn based on the humans that are around them. And halfway through the series, their same type of robot, but it had different mission parameters, and it was kind of fascinating to see how different those ones were than the ones that had been with people who had been trying to help humanity.
Yeah, I think, and really good point, how fiction can actually advise us, right? So you might like 2001: Space Odyssey, and they have this Skype or Zoom equivalent, right, and things like that. So you were saying about, another thing you can think of that AI is trying to do is it's always trying to optimize or minimize things. So minimize pain, for instance, right? If it was a doctor robot, it might be told minimize pain. But then if there was like a dog walking in front of it, it might just like go through the dog, right? Because it's just trying to do what it was, And so what you're saying, like it was set like a mission, like an objective, and that's where, of course, like, it turns out that if I wipe everything on this planet out because it's consuming energy, then I will have all the energy I need. And again, that's the extreme, but fiction can be a very useful tool for mind experiments. Oh, I haven't scared everyone. I don't have nightmares, everyone. Just do the story thing, okay?
So continuing on the fiction question, there's been a lot of niches that AI is being pushed into recently, and we've tend to grown up with AI being the catch-all, fix-all thing in fiction especially. But do you see that as something that's being encouraged, or do you see it more as people behind the scenes who are working on the AI saying that we should pump the brakes a little bit, because most people, average people, tend to see this AI being advanced enough that it can be a catch-all, fix-all system. But do you think people behind the scenes should push the brakes a little bit so that we as a society can catch up, or just plow forwards ahead and let society catch up later?
Yeah, well, that goes back to our previous question, and guardrails and policy. Without going into policy and politics, goodness me, it always comes back. But unfortunately, this is important. In the Industrial Revolution, right, we had these horrible work conditions, right, where all the money was going to the top. And it was these, whatever they were called, like in Victorian times, peace, master, whatever, right? And treating them like rubbish. What we need to do is make sure that all the money that is saved through efficiency, right, is not just going to 3 people at the top. It needs to be coming back down. Starting to sound like a socialist. But the point is that the people who are putting the hard work in, whether they be artists or anything like that, we should be getting a dividend back, because the AI has been trained on our brains, what we've produced. It makes sense. On the flip side, when it comes to some of the creativity and things like that, and I'll come back to the other thing, is that creativity could be defined as rearranging things that already exist into a new pattern. And that, as a musician, of course, I feel like I can say this and not really mean it, but it kind of is, right? Because in music, you're not, unless you're recording new sounds and coming up with a new scale, you tend to be using the same 12 notes and different octaves, but you're rearranging the structure, and that's kind of the, And so when you're using large language models piecing things together, you kind of want it to understand how humans think or how we've done that kind of thing, because it doesn't fall out of an equation, it's cultural. But then, of course, then it leads to other things. So going back to can it be a catch-all, research in one sentence has shown that when it's fixed on, it's a hammer or a screwdriver, it does better than for everyone. And we can also think of, if you just start, can you write me a paragraph on this? It's very hard to match your writing style. It can't guess your writing style straight away. So that's why people can sound like AI, So, yeah, modular is a better approach usually.
So my question is just about AI and about marketing, because as the years go by, we see that phone calls and chatbots are becoming more responsive to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's becoming harder to tell whether you're actually talking to a person or AI. And so far, the only thing I can think of to tell if it's AI or a person is that AI doesn't initiate anything. But do you think that's going to go away soon, where the AI will start to initiate the conversation? Or
If I started that by saying, give the illusion of, or you can, again, we're talking about God, nudging it into a place that it shouldn't be. You can definitely queue it up. You know what I mean? Give it 10 different things, and then people might not see that. They just see the 11th one, and of course, people will trick and say, "Hey, look, it thinks 2 + 3 equals 6," but it's actually been told beforehand to, So on that, I think it would be just another line to say, like, if no answer, you write the computer code, if there's no answer, say something in 2 or 3 seconds, you know. And that's the problem. It's being able to adjust the adjustment and that like fine tuning that is quickly getting us to the things that work best, right? Again, what are we trying to minimize? In this case, we're trying to maximize fooling, right? So, yeah. That's my thought, is it's worrying because the deficiencies, ask it a question, say something like a nonsensical question. I think that's the only way right now, is to say something completely out of the blue, and if it's a human, it'll go, whereas a robot will instinctively think, what's the most likely next phrase, right? In that rush to be latency-free. So, there you go. I've made it, ask it a stupid question. I think, what was that? My son at the back says, you won't be talking about this for the next 4 hours, will you?
This will be our last question.
No, not now. I mean at home. No, please, ask your questions.
I had a bunch of questions and now I can't.
There we go.
But, a couple of thoughts or questions maybe you could reflect on. So, I guess with the ability for AI to create infinite numbers of responses to prompts and permutations of responses, is there a fear that reality as we know it online, at least in media, just loses all credibility because it's saturated with bull hucky?
Yes, the scientific word is noise. No, but so there's, in Nate Silver's first book, The Signal and the Noise, he says, he makes a really good point, not the first one to make it, that the amount of truth in the universe stays the same. So all we're doing is just generating more and more noise, right? There can only be one thing that's true. Not always the case, but that kind of thinking is what you're kind of getting at there, right? That, if there's one answer and you're getting these alternate facts and stuff, then you're just adding noise, and then you've got AI training on AI, right? And so AI training on itself and its messy output that itself has been trained on people's messy output. And I think the focus now is curating data, creating a data set that actually isn't rubbish.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, 2 more.
Okay, so I want to leverage your weather experience here. So
there's a 1 in 2 chance it'll be wrong, but
okay.
Carry on.
All right. So, okay, how much do you think AI can improve the numerical weather predictions models that have been using machine learning for a while? But at what rate of improvement to the 5-day or 7-day forecasting, especially when it comes to where property and lives are at risk, like with hurricane forecasting? What improvements do you see that can happen there?
Yeah.
And also with high visibility on the errors or misinformation or some of the negative aspects of AI, how do you increase public trust in these forecasts so that more lives can be saved or more trust can be attained in those forecasts?
Well, you're exciting me now because if I want to clear a party, I'll just say, I love uncertainty. I research uncertainty. I'm like, oh, what? Go away. But uncertainty really gets me going. And the wisdom of crowds, or why Vegas lines are usually pretty good, is because the more people you ask and the bigger diversity of opinion, the better the average, at least, will perform on average, right? So one thing you can do is ask the same question 5 times in 5 separate windows and take a conceptual average. Obviously, average of all the words wouldn't make any sense. Or you could word it differently 5 times, or there's different ways, right? And that, funnily enough, in the weather side is another big advantage. Is I've got it here somewhere and I skipped past it, but the amount of time it takes to run a pure AI weather forecast model, for instance, that runs globally, is a fraction of the time and a fraction of the supercomputer power. And what that means is that you'll have heard of the butterfly effect. I don't want to try and get too deep, but the smaller something is, the kind of like megapixels, you've got to take a finer and finer picture of it because it's like it's chaotic, right? And so if you run just one weather simulation, it doesn't really have a sense of, well, if you change this or if you change this. Whereas if you run a model that's 100 times faster, you can run 100 of them. So you get this huge sense, and I was talking about this wisdom of crowds like Vegas lines, you're getting the same effect, but in weather forecasts, and you've got 100 opinions instead of one. But you don't lose, you don't have to give up. You see what I'm saying, right? So the more efficient that the model is, the more you can run, and the more information about other possible kind of outcomes you get. Yeah. And again, that leads to probabilities and being wrong half the time. So.
What if you could talk about AGI? And when do you see that being released to the masses, kind of like the narrative of ChatGPT, et cetera?
So, yeah, a couple of things. One was, I don't know about getting around that paradox of keeping a human in the loop, of if it's less intelligent and you correct it, if it's more intelligent, then how do you know whether to correct it? The second thing would be that this idea of trying to be everything to everyone. There's different ways of defining. There's a different definition of intelligence in every paper you read, right? Usually chosen to fit the results. And so some people have claimed that it's already been achieved depending on how you define it. But yeah, to make a long answer short, I'm not convinced that trying to do that, one model to rule them all, when we're seeing that individual models kind of pieced together sometimes give you a better output. But you would think, though, philosophically, to finish, that something that was that intelligent would be able to tie it all together. But there's stuff you can deduce from like mathematical equations, and then there's human culture. And I think that's where some of the issues lie, is that when you're talking about mathematics or that kind of thing, that's one thing, but then human culture is messy and has to be taught completely to the AI because it's nonsensical to its logic, That's where some of the conflict will happen. How can it be generally intelligent if it doesn't know everything about human culture, right? It's tricky. So it might be AGI with like equations, I don't know. Well, thank you. Oh, thanks for the questions, yeah.